Let's explore whether the cult of Jhana is a path to true peace. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question I found on Reddit. The person's title of the question is simply the single Pali word piti, which can occasionally be translated as energy. And they continue. I've been meditating for about a month now, closer to 2 or 3, but those months I was doing it wrong, so I'm not sure how much they'd count. And I've got a question about something that happened last night. I was sitting on my back porch doing anapanasati. Now, anapanasati is neither an Italian salad nor an illicit drug. It's a style of meditation. Let's continue. I was doing anapanasati, and it was a good night. Mind was calmer than normal, nice and cool out. I was able to focus on my breath holistically rather than just on my nose. Knees were a bit stiff, but that's about it. So we're going to stop right here for a moment. So I don't want to be a bully. I don't want to be mean to people. There are plenty of prana-like trolls to be found on the internet, especially on Reddit, who just can't wait to say something mean and worthless to somebody. And I really want to be helpful. So there's something known as Sturgeon's Law, which explains that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. So that also would apply to meditation teachers. One moment, if you please. And one of the great tragedies in the contemporary practice of Buddhism is that the word focus, or the idea of concentration, has become equated with the word mindfulness. But as we will see in just a few minutes, they rely on different parts of the brain and have radically different results. But we'll get back to that. We will stick a pin in that, if that's okay. Let's continue. About 15 minutes in, I suddenly felt exhilarated and really good. Sort of like when someone gives you really good news, or you just achieve a goal you were really nervous about. I got a bit overwhelmed by it and lost track of my breathing, and it went away after probably close to 45 seconds. So next time it happens, I'm plan on just letting it be, continuing to focus on my breath. So I want to touch on this for a moment. The Anapanasati Sutta, or the discourse of mindfulness with breathing, is arguably the Buddha's most popular meditation manual. Not only does it contain the 7 enlightenment factors, a personal favorite, but it contains the 16 exercises of Anapanasati. Now, if someone was to read that, well, I remember the first time I read that way back in the early 90s, when the crust of the earth was still cooling. And that struck me as a series of 16 exercises. However, the minions of orthodoxy teach it as just one exercise, concentrating upon our breath, and then waiting for something amazing to happen. And although that is a popular teaching, that is not literally what the Buddha taught. Now, the problem with it is not that it was not what the Buddha had taught, because quite frankly, the Buddha may have been real or may have been a work of fiction. What really matters is not who wrote something or how old something is, but how beneficial that something is. And we will return to that in just a moment. Let's continue. That being said, I would like to ask if anyone knows what it was. So, number 1, asking this type of question on Reddit is a great way to get attacked. There are some people who are cruel, some people who are cynical, And there are some people who are just plain ignorant. So, having said that, if anybody has attacked you on Reddit, a writer of this question, I apologize. The closest answer I can seem to find is piti, which translates from the Pali as energy. But I feel like 15 minutes and a month of proper practice seems a bit early to develop that. Any ideas? Thanks. So let's explore this for a moment. Most teachers of jhana meditation will tell you it takes an extreme commitment and months, if not years, of practice. But is that what is found in the teachings attributed to the Buddha? When one reads the Satipatthana Sutta, in the second to the final passage, one learns that full enlightenment could be accomplished in as little as 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. So if jhana cannot be accomplished within 7 days, then it probably does not fit into the context of the Buddha's teachings. Now, there are the same people who, well, the humans are funny. And when Lao Tzu composed the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching, he described human attributes in 2 categories, yang and yin, patriarchy and matriarchy. And he said the people who are prone to patriarchy tend to be rigid and fearful and controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Whereas people who are prone to yin tend to be flexible, loving, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So the people in the second category are going to endorse methods that are quick and easy and open to everyone. People in the former category, well, they're just all about a love elitism. Oh, this is a special teaching for a special place at a special time for special people, and you ain't them, pleb. So that's their kind of mindset, and it's yucky, but it's very, very common. It's found in wherever humans are gathered, whether they're gathering vocationally or recreationally, spiritually, or secularly, whether they are gathering amongst friends or relatives or neighbors or sweethearts. A certain percentage of humans are going to be drawn like moths to a flame to the whole idea of being rigid and fearful and controlling and elitist and cryptic and competitive and cruel. I know I was drawn to that as a survivor of horrendous child abuse. And when I finally came to my senses, backing out of that mindset was like a cat, a curious cat with his head stuck in an empty bag of Doritos trying to work its way out. Humorous, but odious. A lot of effort and not a lot of grace was involved in the process. So let's explore the broad brushstrokes of it all. So I've already explained the yin and yang of it. So you might say, but yin and yang, that sounds like Taoism. What does that to do with Buddhism? Well, here's the funny thing. Because these are universal human attributes, it should not surprise us that these same observations were made in early Buddhism. And in early Buddhism, not only did people speak of Gautama, who earned the nickname of the Buddha, but of his wicked cousin Devadatta, who thought it'd be brilliant to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. As opposed to the Gautama, also known as the Buddha, who thought it'd be much better, to be flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So this brings us to the 7 enlightenment factors, which is my favorite thing about the Anapanasati Sutta. And yes, energy is in there, but so is tranquility and balance. So how does this all play out? After being defined by these teachings for multiple decades, not practicing this as a hobby but as a full-time job, I've had the privilege of studying with each sect of Buddhism and living in several monasteries. The people who are the most rigid and literalist in the practice possess the least joy and the least amount of tranquility. So energy can be taken literally as a meditative experience, or it can be taken figuratively. Now remember, if we want to follow the Buddha and follow the path of flexibility, we have to be open to at least the possibility that humans are prone to using symbolic and figurative language. Ask any biologist, and they will tell you that complex life forms upon this planet evolved to think symbolically. So it should come as little surprise that upon every populated continent and every culture and every language, there are figures of speech. Sometimes metaphor, sometimes simile, but figures nonetheless. So in a figurative approach, it may be something we experience, a specific state we experience during meditation. However, it could just be a metaphor for a lifestyle reminder. If the way we live our life is not giving us energy, we will not have great success with meditation. This reminds us that asceticism is not our friend, that self-care is not indulgent, it is a requirement. We need a sufficient amount of sleep and fresh air and sunshine and exercise and water and fruit and vegetables and seeds and nuts and legumes and pulses and tubers and the like. We need a healthy lifestyle. A healthy lifestyle will support the energy, give us the energy we need to experience joy and the overall lucidity required to master the Buddha's path. Remember, the Buddha taught a system that can be mastered in a week, not a quarter, not a year, not a decade, a week. If your teacher cannot help you do that, find one who can. Now, there's one caveat to that. The Buddha's schedule assumes that the people listening to him were already used to sitting cross-legged. In the West, we have couches and lazy boys and chairs. Oh my. But no fear, we can train ourselves to, let me find my diagram here. Here we go. We can train ourselves to sit comfortably and sustainably. We can train ourselves to sit this way 5 minutes every 12 hours the first week, 10 minutes every 12 hours the second week, 15 minutes every 12 hours the third week, 20 minutes every 12 hours the fourth week. And by the conclusion of the 15th week, we could be so comfortable with sitting that we can sit during a lesson, during a 60-minute practice. Therefore, by the end of the 15th week, it is completely possible to have mastered the Buddha's path. Now, there may be those who don't need to be able to sit to do that. I haven't met them, but that's not much. I'm just one person. What do I know? That's just been my experience. Personally, I feel that mastering the Buddha's teachings in less than 4 months is pretty sweet deal. I guess, is that less than 4 months or exactly 4 months? We'll say about 4 months. I still think it's a pretty sweet deal. But I promised some more information, and so I'd like to share that with you if I may. I told you there was a neurological difference between concentration and mindfulness, and I would like to elaborate if I may. When we rely on our medial prefrontal cortex to actively concentrate, and when we rely upon our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to actively contemplate, or blood, according to fMRI studies, to the best of my understanding, the blood tends to collect at the amygdala, this lump of flesh at the bottom of our limbic system, this lump of flesh that tends to function as the seat of both anxiety and aggression, which is sadly ironic, is it not? But there's some good news. When we replace active concentration with the passive mindfulness provided for us by the sympathetic nervous system, and when we replace our reliance of active contemplation with the passive mindfulness provided to us by the parasympathetic nervous system, then our blood mass shifts from our anxious and cranky amygdala to this catcher's mitt shaped bit of flesh that the big kids, the cool kids, describe as the anterior cingulate gyrus. This hunk of meat functions as like the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. Let's take a deeper dive. So, by the way, this is why the highest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the greatest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. It's also why this meditation archetype is depicted, or the members of this meditation archetype are depicted as naked. So let's dig a little deeper into the actual mechanics of mindfulness. Every time we breathe in, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system. No, it is not found within the 3-pound supercomputer between our ears. Instead, it is ensconced within the thoracic or ribcage region of our spinal cord, despite the artistic license of the person who created this graphic. This sympathetic nervous system has not evolved to support either extreme of mind blanking or active concentration. Well, then what has it evolved to support? The sympathetic nervous system has evolved to support simply noticing, and doing so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. We never feel quite as vulnerable as we do when we are naked, which is why Samantabhadra, Samantabhadri, Karamamudra is depicted naked, to remind us of the vulnerability that is crucial to mindfulness. This mindfulness allows us, is wired to support perception of sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. It is also wired to perceive emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. It is wired to perceive everything, from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. So while concentration may be ideal for focusing on a specific state or specific sensation, mindfulness is broadband. It is evolved to perceive everything, everywhere, all at once, just like the movie, kind of. Well, we can perceive all this stuff, and that's Jim Dandy, but what are we supposed to do with that? And that takes us to meditation. So if mindfulness is the seventh fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, then meditation is the eighth fold. But how does that work? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we're wired to access our parasympathetic nervous system. It is found in both the lower lumbar region of the spinal cord as well as the brain stem, right over yonder. And it has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. So this is a completely flexible, ever-changing, evanescent experience. As we breathe in, we notice things. As we breathe out, we release our grasp on those things. Just as no one goes through life with just one breath, if all things go as expected, people are always inhaling and exhaling many thousands of times every day. Similarly, at many thousands of times a day, we are noticing and releasing. Noticing and releasing. Effortless mindfulness, effortless meditation. Here's the great irony about the Buddha's path. It's easy. When done properly, it is easy and pleasurable and fun. I do look forward to exploring the finer details of this with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. And now we come to the latest iteration of this morning's practice text, Easy Meditation, which I don't want to brag or anything, but it's approved by, Buddha Cat, so kind of a big deal. Surely I jest. Let us not be elitist. Whatever you call it, whether you call it Sati, Pasadi, Jhana, Mahamudra, Shan, Proto-Zen, Mahasandhi, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, or Trekcho, it's all just mindfulness and meditation. Now, I've kind of chopped things up a little bit, which is unfortunate. So I think I'm going to hit oopsie that and this. And see if that doesn't show it better on the screen. All right. Let us so we're going to practice now. The first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is right view. And my favorite way of training in that is by bringing the four bases of mindfulness, which are mentioned in the Anapanasati Sutta, bringing those four bases of mindfulness into the figurative practice of the rainbow body. Because remember, complex life forms have evolved on this planet to think symbolically. So we're going to begin with a caveat. Together, let's chant. Rather than indulge or controlling tendencies with our bodies of active visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these wise words in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. Another caveat, Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for literal statements, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. And so we're going to begin. I mentioned the 4 bases of mindfulness. We're going to and easily put, those 4 bases could be described as the mental, the interpersonal, the physical, and the circumstantial. Let's begin with the circumstantial. Please chant with me. All circumstances or lots could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. And so we're seeing melting as a figure of speech for impermanence, and absorption as a figure of speech of interdependence. Blind faith is not required, in fact, as a hindrance. So we're simply going to play with these words in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. So we're going to take all these syllables and squeeze them down, compress them down into just 6 syllables. During our inhalation, we can recite the first half into form, and during our exhalation, we can silently and mentally recite all lots melt. Now, this is not something we have to visualize or believe. These are just words we're playing with as we recite them silently and mentally and passively in harmony with our breathing. Now, I'd like to do this for one set of 4 rounds. But what's a round? Let us agree that a round is simply 1 inhalation followed by 1 exhalation. Let us count our rounds upon the creases and tips, upon the features of our left hand. During our inhalation, we can advance the tip of our left thumb, and we can count upon the first set of creases, and then the second set of creases, and then the third set of creases, and then the tip of our left little finger. Please follow along with me over the next few moments. So I would not describe this as active contemplation as much as passive contemplation. So let's play with 3 additional passive contemplations and then relax in mindfulness and meditation. And that's kind of like the preamble of a sneeze and then the sneeze. The preamble of the sneeze is and the sneeze, chew. So that's kind of like how we're meditating. Yes. It's mucoid meditation, folks. So let's continue. All bodies or forms could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this communication or speech. So first we talked about this body, and we're talking about this speech. And so ironically, we are harnessing the momentum, the dynamo of our own self-centeredness to let go of self-centeredness, which is delicious. Together. All interpersonal speech could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this mind. So you may be feeling some tension building up. That's perfectly normal. It will be released momentarily. And life is like that. An ebb and flow. The tide comes in, the tide comes out. We breathe in, we breathe out. Welcome to the dance of life. Together. All minds could be as impermanent and interdependent as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into a vast empty void. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could be non-graspable to the hand. So, as promised, having played with these passive contemplations, as we inhale, while silently and mentally reciting the demonstrative pronoun this. Well, let's jump back for a second. Sorry, machine. Let's jump back for a second. We've got a sympathetic nervous system optimized, which is evolved for mindfulness. We have a parasympathetic nervous system evolved for meditation. But we've got this 3-pound supercomputer between our ears, which is sort of like Urkel. Can I do that? So we can tame our Urkel by giving him a task. So we say it is as if we are saying to our Urkel-like brain, hey, brain, during our inhalation, would you please silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this? Because if you do, it'll help you to harmonize with the perception which is hardwired into our sympathetic nervous system. And oh yeah, by the way, hey brain, when you exhale, please silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease, which is a synonym of relax. For doing so will help you to harmonize with the factory installed programming to release, which is latent within our parasympathetic nervous system. And so here's the wild thing. Simply, easily, moronically, by playing with these two monosyllabic words, silently and mentally, gently, in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation, without forcing them, just noticing them as they naturally occur, we can drink deep of mindfulness and meditation. Let's practice together. So what I'd like to do now is on my right hand, I'd like to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sets of the 16 rounds I'll be counting on my left hand. Now, it's more ergonomically sound for me to rest my hands in my lap when I'm doing this, so that's what I'm going to do. But now you have a clue. And now, counting, spending several minutes meditation need not feel like an eternity. It could feel bite-sized. It could feel manageable. So with our passive, gentle contemplation, we've played with all sorts of ideas of impermanence and interdependence and non-graspability. And now we can just sit and allow them to settle. And if you're following along, I recommend you set a timer on your smartphone and stop after 5 minutes and come back in 12 hours or so. And do that every day for a week. And then the second week, you can hang out with me for 10 minutes a pop. Third week, 15 minutes a pop. Sure and steady wins the race. Every time we breathe in, we automatically generate a vertical traction between our head and our tush. Every time we breathe out, we relax. The question is not whether that mechanism is in place. The question is only if we possess the perceptual acuity to notice it, for it is subtle. Remember, we have not evolved from mind blanking. We have evolved to notice all sorts of perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. It is as if we were at a play, and you and I are not the playwright, nor the director, nor the producer, nor the actor. We're just a member of the audience, enjoying the show. If patriarchy is rigid, matriarchy is flexible. Where patriarchy delights in the minutiae of precise labeling, matriarchy is content with the vagary of labeling everything with the demonstrative pronoun this. Having climbed into the contemplative altitude, let's try this again. Having climbed to contemplative cruising altitude, together as a team, let us meditate as transformatively as Obi-Wan Kenobi upon the toasty sands of Tatooine, under the guidance of the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. We now come to the central channel yogas of bliss and letting go. And of course, we're going to take an approach that is gentle and easy and idiot-proof. Let us begin with Amoga Siddhis, bliss and letting go. We invoke our lower abdomen, be we male or female, with the noun womb during our in-breath. And of course, we relax during our exhalation. During our inhalation, we invoke the color green. During our exhalation, we relax. Remember, it's not our job to visualize, we're just playing with words passively in harmony with our breathing. We invoke the dynamism of the wind element. And now we can play with the one-syllable mantra known as a seed or bija, pronounced ah. We shift gears, and we now begin to contemplate Ratnasambhava's joy and letting go. During our inhalation, we invoke the tissues behind our navel with the monosyllabic noun gut. We invoke the color yellow with the word gold because it's monosyllabic. We invoke the stability of the earth element silently and mentally. We play with the one-syllable mantra or bija tram. Let's play with Akshobhya's great joy in letting go. We begin with our chest. And the color blue. The moisture of the water element. And the one-syllable mantra or bija, hung. Remember, our job is not to actively visualize, but just to silently, mentally, and passively play with these words in harmony with our breathing. Let us play with Amitabha's very great joy in letting go. Beginning with the part of our throat that kind of tenses up before we weep. We now play with the color red. Let us play with the warmth of the fire element. And let us play with the one-syllable or mantra or bija, free. We conclude this section by playing with Vairocana's exceedingly great joy and letting go, beginning with the scalp at the crown of our head. Let us invoke the color white. There was a British artist fond of drawing on pastels on brown paper because he insisted white was also a color. Let us invoke the spaciousness or the openness of the space element. And let us play with the one-syllable or bija mantra known as Om. Very, very famous. For the next 7 sets of 16 rounds, let's just rest in Om and ease. So we're only resting, we're not concentrating. Sometimes we will experience perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings in the background, sometimes in the foreground. That's okay. Whatever comes, let it come. Whatever stays, let it stay. Whatever goes, let it go. During our inhalation, while silently and mentally reciting the demonstrative pronoun this, we can kick back and watch the antics of mind as it perceives, emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. During our exhalation, as we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease, which functions as a synonym of relax, we can relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Let's do this for 8 sets of 16 rounds. You may feel your eyes rest on the sky as opposed to the horizon. You don't have to force it, but if it happens, don't fight it. Let your body do what it do. Allow me to remind you. Well, let us bring the four bases of mindfulness into the practice of love and letting go. For loving kindness constitutes 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. The second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is wishing love or mental morality. May all minds of all beings now be as blissfully wise as the enlightened mind of a real or imagined Buddha symbolized by a tikle, one suitable seed or bija mantra. Let's rest the mind. Allow me to remind you that wishing love is considered to be the essence of the Bodhisattva vows by the great Karma Jigme Rinpoche. Kind speech would be the key to interpersonal morality. May all relationships or speech of all beings now be as joyfully loving as a real or imagined Buddha's communication symbolized by the 12 syllable mantra. Let us rest the mind. Kind conduct reminds us that the essence of the hundreds of pratimoksha vows is simply non-violence. Let's chant. May all bodies or forms of all beings know and show the beautiful health seen in Buddhist statuary, depicting the blissful body of a real or imagined Devi or Yadaman archetype of enlightenment such as Kuntu Sangpo. Let's rest the mind. Kind commerce could be thought of as circumstantial morality, and that simply boils down to not being a Karen forever trying to get people fired, or a Chad forever trying to drive other concerns out of business. Instead, putting away our cruelty and competition and trading them in for kindness and cooperation. Let's chant. May all circumstances or lots of all beings know have the good fortune or boon. As a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, pure land or Vanti. May all circumstances be freed of genocide, war, exploitation, sexism, classism, or racism, or homophobia. And for this morning's final rest of the mind. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 9.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class, group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.